Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, picking up where we left off. So we're at Dingley Dell campground on the sort of central eastern side of the Flinders Ranges, and our plan this morning was to head off and do the Caernarvon track, or Mt Caernarvon track. Now I had made inquiries about this prior to us arriving, but unfortunately it wasn't actually open, so you do need to book. And looking back over my correspondence, they did recommend that I get in touch again a few days out. Once we're in the Flinders Ranges, there's not mobile signal in very many places. I did actually ring them and leave a message, but I think, like a lot of things, they just weren't open. So as you just saw on the screen there, we came up with a plan B and we headed south on the Flinders Ranges way here to Rawnsley Park Station, with a view to doing their self-drive, four-wheel drive tracks, which is called Arkapena. Quite a well-known, famous one. Rawnsley Park Station has a lot to offer. They're primarily a tourism business these days, so they've got a shop on site, they've got caravan parking, they've got bush camping, they've got a restaurant on site, so it's a great destination if you're looking for somewhere to stay on the eastern Flinders Ranges. So that's the main office there. Some of the caravan park area and cabins, which they also have on site here, just on the right there. So yeah, we've just been in there, paid our fee. Again, I don't remember 100%, but I think it was around $40-$45. $40 to $50 is the going rate for most of the paid self-drive, four-wheel drive tracks. And then we headed back out onto the main station road. Rawnsley Park Station is quite a large station. And yeah, it wasn't too long before we were back out on the main road, and the start of the Arkapena Loop is just south of the station, and that's the Chase Range you can see there in the distance, and that's where we'll be heading along on today's adventure. So turning right here onto Flinders Ranges Way and heading south just a couple of kilometres, and that takes us to the start of the Arkapena Loop. Now this is pretty easy, this one. There's two separate loops. The first one is designated all-wheel drive, the second one is designated four-wheel drive. Honestly, I think both could be done by an all-wheel drive. Possibly just need a little bit more clearance on the second one, but it's not like you need a lift or anything like that. So yeah, got the key and met Luca down here. He kindly volunteered to open the gate, and this is the start of the Arkapena Loop.
What's that? Absolutely.
It's a nice easy start. And as I said, this is the all-wheel drive loop, and as you can see, pretty straightforward. Another one of those dry creek beds, dry river beds that are prevalent throughout the Flinders Ranges. Biggest difference here is there's just no grass. There's the odd little ground cover and these small trees here that are struggling to survive, but there's no grass. Not even weeds, really. And we have come across a second gate here. This one's not locked, but it is shut because they do run stock in the area. Not sure what the stock eat, but maybe these little bushes and ground covers, perhaps. can see here, the track's fairly well defined. It's suddenly cut into the ground in places, and then other places like this, it's barely visible. So that's the Chase Range that you can see in the distance before, and that's where we're heading towards. So just for reference, I've double checked. So the two tracks are known as the red and the blue track, sorry, yellow and red track. And if you want to do both, it's $65 per vehicle, or the yellow track only is $55 per vehicle. And you can check out the map for these on the Rawnsley Park Station website. And the yellow track is this first one, which is the all-wheel drive one, and it's the longer of the two. Look, for my money, if you're paying $55 to do this one, you might as well pay another $10 and do the red one as well. It was a nice drive, had some steeper sections, which you'll see when we get to that one, and definitely worth the drive. Just amazing scenery here. The GoPro doesn't really do a great job of capturing things that are far away. You get a much better view when you're there in person. As you can see, we are getting closer and closer to that Chase Range, and it was such a rocky range as well. Again, you can see dotted with little bushes, but not a lot of grass cover or anything like that, and an incredibly rocky range in those sort of curved beehive formations. Every time we sort of came around the corner, we were a little bit closer and getting a different view. Little beeline track here. And of course, I've come straight up here and seen this track on the left. There is the normal road on the right hand side, so I didn't see that. Traction controls kicked in pretty quick and driven up there nice and easy.
You know the track was further ahead, don't you?
No, I didn't see it. I just saw the track there. Was that not the track that I went up?
No, you had to continue around it.
I just don't see those beelines, do I?
No, you just don't see them. You know, given the fact that they did say it was an all-wheel drive track, there's no way an all-wheel drive would have made that.
Well, I was thinking that. I'm looking at it and going, you classify this as all-wheel drive? That's a bit harsh. But yeah, the fact that there's a track around it makes more sense.
So yeah, a little bit of extra adventure there, but yeah, very much a two-wheel drive road around that little obstacle. And you can see here we're basically in the foothills of that Chase Range on the right hand side. Obviously when we're paralleling it like this, the camera doesn't pick up that view, but you've got a magic view out the driver's side window. Again, crossing one of these dry creek beds, the only place you really see some of the larger trees. And another crossing of a overland flow path or dry creek bed here, a little bit steeper descent. And again, you can see just how rocky the terrain is here. It's just rocks everywhere, very inhospitable. No wonder this was a part of South Australia where the early settlers just really struggled to establish any sort of pastoral activity. No grass, limited water, got a bit of a view there of the Chase Range as we're sort of paralleling that, coming towards it and then moving away from it slightly. You can get some idea there of some of the rock formations in the face of the Chase Range. And again, you can see how rocky this area is just off the side of the track. The track itself is pretty well graded, and again I can see exactly why they say this is suitable for all-wheel drives, because it would be. I was in high range the whole time, and I'm not sure I even locked the centre diff, because the Grenadier is a permanent four-wheel drive, so you can drive in 4 high without the centre diff lock. A little tight at times with some of the smaller trees growing up, and that's the thing, the scenery does change throughout this track fairly markedly. The range on the left there is to the north of Rawnsley Station, and that's the southern edge of Wilpena Pound. And again, just for anyone watching this video that haven't caught the others, this was filmed in January of 2025, so very much the off-peak time for the Flinders Ranges. Little arrow there indicating that we stay on the main track here and continue around to the left, don't take the side track. But yeah, if you've heard of the Flinders Ranges, you've almost certainly heard of Wilpena Pound, and we're looking at the southern edge of Wilpena Pound there. Some footage from Luca on board here as we work our way down this little rocky section. No gate here, but there are some fences. Again, Wilpena Pound there, just exiting on the left of frame as we swing back around towards the Chase Range. Just a big open area here.
Yeah, it seems to be pointing us right here, but it feels a bit like we're looping back on ourselves, but seems to be the way.
Yeah, have a look at that visual in front of you, would you?
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, it doesn't really get old, does it? Like, every time you get that little bit closer, you see a little bit more detail in the rocks.
Yes, different angles, different distances, the shadows. Yeah, very nice.
And it certainly was a nice scenic drive along here, and that's what this is, I guess. It's you know, it's not a difficult four-wheel drive track. If you're looking for a challenge, this is not the one to take on. This is a really nice scenic drive on private property, and you know, my view is if you go into the area, you might as well experience it. And if it costs you $50, the tracks are well maintained, and it keeps the access open by people actually utilising the opportunity. Another crossing there of a dry riverbed. I'd really love to see this country in a big rainstorm or wet season. Again, you can see those striations of rock on the Chase Range there as we're driving towards it. Dry creek bed, dry stream bed here, crisscross the country, but for them to form like that, they must flow at some point. Skippy there, not the last one we're going to see. Let me just tell you that. We might have a close encounter with one a little bit further down. I think he was enjoying whatever shade he could find. Crossing another little dry stream bed there. And we have come to another closed gate, so again this one's not locked, but it is closed. Reasonably snug fit through there for the Grenadier. Lucky I'm not driving one of those American trucks. And Luca did shut that gate after he came through. He didn't leave it open. Working our way down along the range here. So this is a reasonably long drive. Rawnsley Park Station nominate 4.5 hours. I think that's for both the red and yellow tracks. They do say on the website both tracks are four-wheel drive only. However, when we booked in, they told us the yellow one was all-wheel drive and the red was four-wheel drive. So possibly this is a little more graded than what it used to be, a little bit more well maintained. And yeah, keep a lookout for the kangaroo just up here in the red circle. See how he hops in and waits, and then he attacks. So yeah, amazingly, no damage done to the vehicle. Not even scratch marks on the bonnet. He's landed mostly on the windscreen, and I was stunned that there was no damage done to the vehicle. Very, very lucky. Crazy kangaroo. I think he was heat struck. So yeah, just making our way here through the trees. And yeah, you can see we're making pretty good time here. Generally we're able to maintain a pretty good pace. Just the odd little dry stream crossing like this that we've had to slow down a bit for. And if you're staying at Rawnsley Park or camping in one of the campsites nearby, great day out. As you saw at the start of this video, Luca and I had intended to do Mt Caernarvon today, and so by the time we got down to Rawnsley Park, it was pretty late in the morning, and we still had plenty of time to get in and do both these loops. Admittedly, we didn't stop and smell the roses a whole lot. You certainly could take more time if you're inclined to stop and get more photos along the way, stretch your legs, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think the 4.5 hours that they quote on the website is pretty reasonable. Another closed gate just here after that rocky little climb out of that dry stream bed. Another skippy there. Fortunately, that one headed off before he decided to jump on my car. Some good sized rocks in that little stream bed there. Another skippy there. There's more of them around than you think. A little bit of a climb here, but again, nothing difficult. Hardest part's probably making the turn in the Grenadier with the turning circle that we have. This end, the countryside's a little bit more undulating than it was earlier on, which does provide a bit of interest. And we've come up here onto a little rise. Again, nice and close to the Chase Range there. Some amazing views out the driver's side window through here. You can see the various colours in the rocks here. Just amazing. It really is like nowhere else. And let me reassure you that these images from the GoPro are not remotely doing this justice. You do need to go there, you do need to check it out. It is so much more impressive in person. Tracks are pretty well marked and easy to follow, and you do get a good map with some notes to follow along as well. Crossing yet another little stream bed. I lost count of how many of those there were. You can see how close we are here to the main range. Bit of a lumpier section of the track here where some water obviously flows across it. A little bit eroded on the right hand side there, but still plenty of room for us to get through. Paralleling the dry stream bed there on the left where you can see all those rocks. Just a slightly different bit of scenery here. You can see some of those old river red gums. Amazing old trees, just trying to hang on to life. see the track up ahead there as it loops around and continues our journey along the Chase Range. Just making our way here up to another little ridge line, giving us a great view of the tail end of the range. So this is nearly at the end of the first longer loop here, and this last section in particular was a great little sort of mini ridgeline drive. Again, you can see how rocky it is just either side of the track there. But fantastic views of the range from up here, looking across that little valley there on the right hand side. And just climbing up the last little bit here. Certainly be four-wheel drive if you didn't have a made track here to follow. You can see how rocky that terrain is, but on the track definitely all-wheel drive territory. So just jumped out here and did take a couple of stills with the Chase Range in the background there. Just amazing country. Gives you a frame of reference for how big some of those rocks on the side of the track actually are. And yeah, continued on along this little ridge line. This was definitely my favourite part of this first part of the Arkapena Loop tracks here. It was really nice drive along here, and just not like anything anywhere else with these sharp rocks jutting up out of the ground just right beside the track. And you can see we're just about at the end here of the Chase Range. And you can see where the track turns. It did take a little bit of checking here just to confirm which way we're supposed to go, but we do head around to the right as it looks like the main track sort of heads. So I just did pull up there for a second to check the map and the driving directions and confirm that this is in fact the direction that we head. So down off this ridgeline back towards the Chase Range for a last little section close to the range. A little bit windy out there, you can hear that coming through the mic on the GoPro. And just making our way through this little gully. So another little stream crossing or dry stream crossing, and little climb out. So there's a few of these, and you can see there from the camera angle it's reasonably steep, but traction's really good. You don't need a high clearance four-wheel drive to do this, and you're very quickly back onto a flat gravel road. So that's the end of the first loop of the Arkapena track, and as you can see on screen, should have turned left here, but saw the track opposite, had a quick look at the map and went, oh yeah, the other loop's straight across here. So drove in and came to the gate and then realised we're actually going the wrong way. This is the end of the four-wheel drive loop, not the start. So you're actually meant to turn left where you come off the first one, drive down to the start, turn right to start it, drive that loop around in that direction, and it ends you up back there. So first misstep there, and not the last one. As we're coming down here, the second Arkapena Loop actually starts just on the right hand side, just before we go over the cattle grade here. So that track there on the right hand side is actually the track, but the one after the cattle grid looked a lot more established, and I thought this was it. Again, if I looked more closely at the map provided by Rawnsley Park Station, I would have realised this is actually just a one-way track. Look, it's still worth doing. You could do it now, or you could do it after you do the second loop. This is actually just a one-way in, one-way out track that takes you up to the top of this little hill here, which is called Pugilist Hill. And a pugilist, of course, is somebody who boxes or fights with their fists, and apparently this hill got its name from two station hands that had a fist fight on top of this hill back in the early 1930s, and the name has stuck ever since. So again, Wilpena Pound there to the right, just exiting the right of screen, and then looking back across to the balance of Rawnsley Park Station and the Chase Range. Nice panorama of the whole range there as we turn around. Absolutely worth driving up here to check out the view, that's for sure.
You know, if you can find where the track goes. Looking on the map, I think we've just come up on top of Pugilist Hill, and the track actually is a little bit sort of separate to this.
Roger, okay, we'll go hunting for it.
So that's the track over there, that's the other side of the cattle grade.
Okay, well, it's got to be close.
Yeah, I reckon that's it. This is just like a little optional one. Funny, there's a sign at the bottom saying impassable for towing vehicles when it's just a track that goes up to this hill.
Yeah, I can see the track now. I think you're on the money. There it is, just in front of us, next to it.
So yeah, there was a sign, I'd forgotten that, there was a sign at the bottom of that track up Pugilist Hill saying impassable for towing vehicles. Again, I think that's been graded because the notes I've seen elsewhere on the net about the track up there say it's steep and rocky and a reasonably difficult climb. It certainly wasn't either of those things, in my opinion. It was a nice gravel road and very drivable, and I certainly would have towed my Dodge camper up there without a second thought. So now we're in the right location. We're actually starting the second Arkapena Loop, which is the red track, which is designated four-wheel drive only. There are some steeper sections on this, so I can see why they say that, but you certainly don't need a particularly well set up four-wheel drive. Any stock four-wheel drive will definitely be able to do this track. Again, you know, areas like this, it just struck me the complete absence of any grass. You've got these trees struggling for life, but there's no grass or ground cover to speak of. It's just so unlike Victoria. it really does drive home just what a harsh sort of environment we're in here. And you can see from the start here, it's again very similar to the first one, largely a sort of a two-wheel drive gravel road, pretty well made. The odd little speed hump there, and you can see in the distance the track continuing up over that next hill. And as I said, you will find there's some steeper sections on this red track. So we finally hit the gate. So there's no gate down the bottom, but there is a gate here with a padlock on it, because this is a paid self-drive track. So you do need to pay the money, and you should pay the money. And after the gate, we're into the first long climb, which is a bit of a rarity for this area. A little bit rocky, but nothing terribly difficult. As you can see, I'm still maintaining a reasonable pace, and car's just sort of taking this in its stride. A couple of sections there look like the ground's been disturbed a little bit. Maybe people spinning wheels. Possibly, you know, I don't know, maybe they were in all-wheel drives, maybe they didn't let the tyre pressures down at all. We're not running super low tyre pressures, but probably mid to high 20s. This sort of track feels very familiar. It's got sort of Vic High Country vibes, where you're driving on the side of the hill with a decent drop-off, although just so much more rocky than most of the tracks in the Vic High Country. This one with rocks both sides of the track. Again, the track itself is well maintained and in quite good order. So apart from having to dodge the odd large rock that's fallen onto the track, that big square one there comes onto the track, someone's going to have to dodge him for sure. And the odd branch sticking out at sort of head height, it's a pretty straightforward drive along here. Different views, but really nice. You know, this little valley down here to the right just looks amazing. And as I said, this is a long, steady climb as we're sort of wrapping our way around this hill and climbing up towards the top. Doing these two loops together too, great if you're in a family group and some like scenery and some like a bit of four-wheel driving. Well, between the two of them you get both. I would say the scenery on the first loop is better along the Chase Range. It's just really amazing, but you actually get to do a bit of driving on the red loop. So together they make for a great sort of half-day adventure. You don't need to start particularly early, and you're not going to finish particularly late. So yeah, great sort of little day trip from a base camp somewhere in the Flinders nearby. And as I said, Rawnsley Park Station would make a great base camp for these, and they do offer powered sites, caravan sites, bush camping sites, cabins if you want that kind of thing. So lots of accommodation options there. And given that that's where you need to go to pay the fee and pick up the keys, makes a lot of sense. Still working our way along this little track with the drop-off. Nice little rocky climb here. Just as we get to a bit of a summit, bit of a lookout, we get a nice vista sort of across the landscape, and again here as we swing around back to the Chase Range, you can see we're a lot further away here, up at a good height. And just taking it slow and steady and frankly enjoying the view. So you can see there, you know, we are a fair distance across from where we were, driving along the foothills of the Chase Range there. We're over here on the other side of the next group of hills effectively, and just starting to descend now off this one. As I said, this is more of a four-wheel drive track than the first one. You've got some good climbs and descents in this, but the track itself is in really good condition. Certainly at the time we drove it here in January of 2025 it was, and I imagine Rawnsley Park keep it pretty well maintained. Even on the hill just in front of us there, you can see some of the rock strata exposed, running on that sort of 45-degree angle. Really old geological area through here, and that's about as much as I know about that. Again, this has now turned into a bit of a ridgeline drive, with the hill sort of rounding off to either side. See the track there up ahead, winding its way sort of across the ridgelines and down the valleys in between the hills. So a very different track, this one, to the first one, and that's why I would say, you know, for the extra $10, well worth doing both of them. This one is quite a bit shorter, but very different to the first one. Definitely more of a driver's track, this one, but still with some great scenery and some great views, particularly when you get to the top of some of these hills. So another good little climb here. Working our way to the top of the next hill. Vegetation just trying to hang on to life. None of the trees get to grow too big. Any of the bigger ones are fairly dead looking. I can only assume that that's because they can't get enough water once they get to a certain size to sustain themselves. Working our way through a little valley here between a couple of the hills, so hopefully this has given you a really good idea of the Arkapena Loop. I strongly think it's worth doing. Luca and I both enjoyed this, and particularly the first section along the Chase Range. And you know, it was nice to get a little bit of actual driving in on this second loop that does require a little bit more of the driver and the vehicle. And this would be great, you know, if you're not super experienced in four-wheel driving, this would actually be a really good track, or a couple of tracks to drive. So I've got a friend of mine heading to the Flinders very shortly, and they're going with a group of people, some of which have, I think, never taken their four-wheel drives off the bitumen. So something like this would be a great experience for them. The view into the distance here, the camera doesn't really pull that in, and you don't see it through the GoPro camera here the same way you do when you're actually there. But you know, there's no shortage of stuff to look at. Another skippy just there on the left. So you're in this really barren looking landscape with no grass around and no water. And that's like the fourth or fifth kangaroo that we've seen. They do seem to be by themselves. They're not in the mobs that you're used to seeing them. There's obviously just not enough food around for big mobs of them, but they're still around, clearly, that being the fourth or fifth one we've disturbed coming through today. Just working our way along this little ridge line here. As you're sort of working past each of these hills, you're just waiting to get to the crest of the next one and see what vista it's going to open up for you. As you come over the top like that and get a look at another view across this amazing scenery. So steady climb here, not steep. See the chase reins there back off to the right. We are getting along. Here, getting close towards the end of this one, where it works its way back to that main road. And yeah, coming down off the hills there, it does get reasonably tight. You can see through here. Trees pretty close as we go through this little dry stream bed. Some gnarly looking trees there. Definitely in the foothills here, a lot lower. Just climbing up from that little dry stream bed. This one was a little bit steeper, just crossing that stream bed and then starting to climb back up from it. This is probably one of the steeper little climbs here, getting towards the end of this track. And while it was steep, traction was no issue. Really well made track, good order. The engine's running there because I had the gear selector in manual, so that was probably in second gear. Still getting used to the gear selection on this, and you've got to remember I've come from the 76, which was manual and only a 5-speed, and this is an 8-speed. Some footage here from Luca as we make our way over a couple more of these hills. continue on our way towards the exit. Just taking it nice and steady through the little steep crossing section at the bottom. And you can see there, we've got another little valley to cross here before coming up on the other side. Looking back through the hills there towards the Chase Range again. And you can see the track up ahead of us there, snaking its way over these foothills. So I lost count of how many of these little dry riverbeds we crossed. So different to the high country where most of the year every little stream has usually got at least a little trickle of water in it. You certainly get the picture here that water is a valuable and scarce resource. And definitely something that you want to make sure you bring plenty of it with you. Yeah, look, this was a really enjoyable sort of 4 to 5 hours doing these two loops, and just another piece of the Flinders Ranges that we got to enjoy and experience. There's the Chase Ranges, we're heading back towards it. See, I think this is the last decent sized hill that we've got to cross, so I just pull up and just enjoy the view there before continuing on. Nice little descent here into this next little valley, and that's probably the biggest difference. You know, the main track or the first track is longer and generally flatter, whereas the second red track is a lot more undulating. You spend a lot more time going up and down and a lot less time on flat sections of track. And you can see the main road there as we're descending off the last little hill here. This is probably the rockiest, most four-wheel drive section, just descending down this little hill here before we get back to the main road there. And while I say it was the rockiest, most four-wheel drive section, it's still not difficult by any stretch of the imagination. Now coming down here, we've got yet another dry stream bed to cross here. Now I've come down here and I've gone, well, that must be where the track is, and I've started heading down the dry stream bed here because that looked like where the track was going to be. And then I've realised Luke is behind me and he's suddenly over there, and I've missed this little turn off here. And for some reason, right at the end of this track, there is a little long drop toilet there. So, you know, not on the first loop, but at the very end of the second loop, there's a long drop toilet there. So if you've managed to wait this long and you need to do something, there's an amenity there that can accommodate that. So this is the exit gate. So again, this gate has a lock on it. So Lucas just opened that gate for us to head on out. You can see a couple of jerry cans on his roof there. GU does get pretty thirsty, and the long leg between Cameron Corner and Arkapena, he wasn't sure how much fuel he might need there, and also just wasn't sure on petrol availability in the Flinders Ranges, so he did bring a couple of jerry cans just in case, which is never a bad idea. So guys, look, I hope you've enjoyed this snapshot of Arkapena. I thoroughly recommend, if you're going to the Flinders Ranges, you check this one out. It's not a difficult track by any stretch of the imagination. It's pretty easy. The scenery is amazing, and Rawnsley Park Station is your base for this one. So thank you to everybody that's commenting on these videos. I really appreciate that. Like and subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't already. We really appreciate everyone that does that for us, and it does make a big difference to us seeing that subscriber number grow. So thank you again, guys, and we will see you in the next video.